I'm still weighing it. I know my mind wants to do one thing, my heart wants to do another thing.
I'm a Trump girl, so I feel like there's a lot of enthusiasm for Trump, and we just drive around and see all the signs.
I'm voting for Kamala, and I thought under Trump's presidency, the country was a little bit too chaotic.
All those women in Pennsylvania, you hear their thoughts about the race come Tuesday, and that brings up the issue of the gender gap. And we saw it in an NBC poll just out, and how big that split is pretty significant. If you look at women at 57 for Harris, men at 40, and then 58-41 for Trump. The Real Clear Politics average nationally now stands at Trump at 48.5% to Harris at 48.3%. What about this? Let's break down where these races stand on the final weekend of the campaign. Joining us tonight, Karl Rove, former Deputy Chief of Staff of President George W. Bush, political consultant, co-founder and chairman of Purple Strategies, Alex Castellanos, and Mark Penn, former advisor and pollster for President Bill Clinton. He's CEO of Stagwell, chairman of the Harris Poll. I feel like I have the brain trust here. The big names.
CPR, right here. Castellanos, Penn, and Rove.
Okay, there we go. Where are you right now?
Coin toss. This thing is too close. Could be affected by the last-minute decisions of voters and by the quality of each side's ground game. If you look at all three of these sort of major aggregators, RCP, 538, and Silver Bulletin, today four of the 21 numbers they gave us, three aggregators times 7 battleground states, 4 of them are 2 points. 7 of them are 1 to 1.9, and 10 of them are less than 1 point separating the two in these states.
Mark Penn, who do you want to be right now? Which side do you want to be this evening looking at what you're looking at?
Well, I'd rather be Trump this evening for the simple reason that there are lots and lots of polls that show it dead even. The only fact we know is that the Republicans have done a lot better in the mail-in and early voting than they ever have. And I believe that they were losing 1 to 2 points in voters who never showed on election day who supported them. And so the fact is they're better off. The jobs report was 12,000 jobs, which was pitiful. I would have taken Trump's hand, although I know my Democratic friends are in fact cheering tonight. They feel a lot better since that Iowa poll came out, and they feel good momentum on the ground.
We're talking about the Iowa poll. This is Des Moines Register, and this poll had Harris up, Alex, 3 points. And there you see Robert F. Kennedy Jr. at 3 points. An Emerson poll came out with Trump up 10, just about a half an hour before that. Polling in the last few days before an election, what's your thoughts on that?
I'm ready to say, let's kill all the pollsters instead of the lawyers, except my friend Mark Penn. I like Mark Penn. I think the pollsters are getting this wrong. We're all missing something because they're giving us the same poll over and over again. There isn't even statistical variation. 95% confidence level means that 5% of the time you're going to get a crappy poll. We hardly ever see that. It's like they're telling us we're watching a basketball game where every play is a jump ball. Somebody's missing something. What I think they're missing is a massive shift in voter registration underneath all of this. 31 states have voter registration by party. 30 of them in the past 4 years have seen movement toward Republicans. Miami-Dade County is now voting more Republican. Iowa was +1 Republican. It's now +10. And yet we're getting these surveys that I think are off base. Somewhere, somebody is missing something. I think I'm not going to call it a wave, but I think there's a wavelet out there of Republican enthusiasm and registration. If I register to vote Republican, whether I'm switching or new, what am I going to do?
We just don't know where the independents are that have already voted. There's a big significant chunk of those, and if they break in a significant way towards Harris or towards Trump, it obviously determines the election.
Well, and look, Alex is right about the Republican registration gains like in Pennsylvania and North Carolina, and even Nevada. Used to be the old rule of thumb was you had to have 70 to 100,000 person gap between Republicans and Democrats for the Republicans to have a chance. It's 19,000 now. But you put your finger on it. At the same time that the Republican registration has been rising in many of these states, like North Carolina, it's been outpaced by, in that case, the unaffiliated. In Nevada, it's been outpaced by what they call the nonpartisans. but it basically declined to state not a Democrat, not a Republican, an independent, and we don't know how they're voting. Look, the Iowa poll, Ann Seltzer is a great pollster
and has a great track record.
And has a great track record. However, she's suggesting that the state in this poll is that basically has moved 11 points away from Donald Trump. 1 out of every 5 people who supported Donald Trump 4 years ago no longer support him. I think we'd feel that.
Mark, I'm going to put up the New York Times Siena battleground state polls here, and they also caused waves this morning. And you saw the betting markets, you know, all kind of moves going on, and people texting me like, is this a major shift? In the bottom of that poll, it says, across these final polls, white Democrats were 16% likelier to respond than white Republicans. That's a larger disparity than our earlier polls this year, and it's not much better than our final polls in 2020. Even with the pandemic over, it raises the possibility that the polls could underestimate Mr. Trump yet again. This is at the bottom of the poll in the little fine print. And it kind of encapsulates the whole thing that we're looking at here, right?
Well, and I think that's the big question that you really have going into this. Is there Trump enthusiasm and is there Trump shyness when it comes to polls? That non-response number by Republicans is serious, that they don't want to give their views in polls. Look, I think there's no question that there have been some registration changes, but no matter how close the polls are, the underlying change is the Republican Party is now a working class party. The Democratic Party is now a professional upper class party. And that is what we're seeing play itself out. And we don't know the result because we don't know if the professional upper class is really going to win, combined with the minority vote versus the working class vote, with a lot of senior men, particularly, you know, downscale men who have shifted to Trump. There's a battle here. This is not a homogeneous country or a homogeneous situation by any means. That's why it's so difficult for these polls to call it.
I can, you know, tell that I'm around smart people when they all nod together. When you say something and you know, they're all nodding.
We worked that out beforehand.
Yeah, right. Alex, what about closing with celebrity? It didn't really work in 2016 for Hillary Clinton. You're going to have a number of concerts and a number of things. You obviously had Saturday Night Live last night. Thought about that and how it affects things.
People have too much information these days about who these candidates are and what they're going to do to be influenced by something like a celebrity. It does say class, though, to Mark's point. Are you with the working people or are you with the Hollywood and entertainment elite? It may not be the best thing for Kamala Harris to use celebrities.
Last thing, do you think we'll know early in the night and have a picture of where this thing shapes up, or do you think we're going to have to wait until later?
We'll know some things, some trends that are in train, but I don't think we'll know how dispositive they're going to be. We're going to know early on, for example, with North Carolina, an early reporting state, Georgia and Florida, at, say, black and Latino areas of those states. We're going to know from some of the early states how the rural white vote is doing, but we're not going to know, you know, there is a complex pattern here, and there are so many variables that are going to have an outcome. If I had to pick one, I'd pick the one you started with. Is the gap among women going to be larger on behalf of Harris than the gap among men is for Trump? Because more women are going to vote. If Trump is lucky, it'll be 52. If Trump is unlucky, it'll be 53 or higher. But there gets to be a point where if the gap among women is bigger than the gap among men, it's mathematically difficult to win.
And we have this amazing thing, Fox News voter analysis, that's been in the field already. It's 100,000 that we will be able to look at those results of essentially an ongoing poll/exit poll that will be able to tell us if it's matching what the real numbers are, which is why we can make projections like we make them. Guys, thank you so much. Karl, Alex, Mark, appreciate it.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.